Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Afimov. I'm ready to welcome you at the Skills for Recovery in the context of Ukraine. Today we will discuss a very topical issue, and the starting point will be the presentation of research of market on retraining and professional development conducted by Helvetas by request of the Ministry of Agriculture of Ukraine. We will start with the organizational issues. If there are error alerts, you will hear the sound. We will assess the threat, and if necessary, we will kindly ask you to proceed to the nearest shelter, but hopefully everything will be in the best way possible. Please pay attention that on the flip side of your badge there is a QR code which you can enter and find the agenda of today's session, presentation materials, and more importantly, photographs made by Mr. Maxim. This event would not be possible without our partners. That's why it's critical to say that the event is organized in the energy sustainability of Ukraine under the auspices of the Swedish Switzerland Organization of Cooperation. It is conducted by ERP Consortium, including Mercy Corps, Right for Protection, Helvetas, and JERU. And upon the results of the study, we will get acquainted in a couple of minutes. And now I would like to invite to the floor the Minister of Daria Marchak. Please, the floor is yours. Dear colleagues, hello. I hope that very soon we will know each other perfectly well by names and patronymic faces, positions, because so far we have a very small but tight circle, and I hope that this circle will expand. And that today's study is an important benchmark in our work. I'm sorry, as usual, I was running. I'm very grateful to our Helvetas partners and to the government of Switzerland for supporting our concepts and studies that help us on the process of policy making in the ministry to find the facts and the arguments and to shape the following steps and subsequent decisions. We sincerely believe that governmental decisions and solutions must be built on the premises of facts and numbers, and this study provides an enormous scope of information referred to what's going on in the retraining sphere in Ukraine. I'm grateful to the study team who conducted this survey. I'm grateful I had the privilege of look at the draft of the study conclusions and make additional questions, and I hope that the results which you will see will be useful not only to myself but also to the entire domain and will help us understand better how we should proceed in the future. Several larger marks as to the point of what it's all about. When I arrived here, many people know me in the previous professional iterations. I arrived to the Ministry of Economy and I deal with the market of labor. After I dealt with social payments and pension policy in the Ministry of Social Policy. When I looked at the market provided in the skilling and reskilling, I was surprised how much decentralized this domain is. It seems to me that it's so decentralized that when I tried to ask, who knows how this market looks like, I have not seen a single person who would know an answer to this question in my country. But in fact, we're speaking about the sector which is critical, which is super important. Last week, I was invited by the British government to a conference in Hilton Park in the subject matter of the labor market regulation. The issue was in which way the regulation of skills and competences development is done in other countries, among other things in the Great Britain. I was surprised how different our systems are, dramatically different. And this difference lays in various issues. We discussed it with Yulia Zhakhchak, the chief of the State Service of Employment. We don't have a top down approach in Ukraine in terms of the skills that we train our citizens, which skills are required in the labor market, what's necessary for the employers. Now we started to work on this issue. We already have, thanks to Helvetas, 2 years of studies in the employer's needs in terms of skills. We already start understanding which competencies are required, which competencies exist, and where we have deficits. Now we started thinking which other soft skills we require in the labor market. But how does the system, the British system, work? There is a government that does regular studies of not only hard skills, but soft skills and what will be necessary for the employers, how the labor market will look like per se in 2 years, in 5 or 10 years, based on the technology development. What becomes necessary and demanded in the labor market. And the British government regularly does such studies and gives a signal for the sector, and they have regulation that identifies the priority was our priority will be soft skills and AI. Our priority will be, let us say, like at this meeting where I was, they identified the priority, the best mentorship and coachship for people with low level of education. We are very distant so far from understanding clearly which specific skills horizontally we do require, not only hard skills but also soft skills we require in our market. We're also very distant from realizing who is providing those skills, what is given to us by our sector of retraining system. When I came to this office, I could not find information how many providers of training services we have, formal and informal education, where they are located. Are they evenly distributed in Ukraine? What's the quality? Which competences are covered? The answers to all those questions were not available, and the study which is being presented to you now provides a part of questions to the questions which I'm sure we as a country need to seek the exact answers to. Therefore, it's a teaser for you to understand the importance of what's going on. Without understanding where we have gaps and who can close those gaps, what's the quality of services, how many players are in the sector as a whole, Without this understanding, we won't be able to move on. Myself and you most likely won't be able to remedy the disbalance in the labor market without the availability of basic knowledge. Such studies, which will be presented today here, will help closing these gaps, and I hope to the following steps. Yes, I have many new ideas for further studies. I hope that with the further steps, we will better formulate the way in which we will jointly control the quality of service providers who how we will build the system when not only the ministry, the employment service, and even the employers well know who and where are the service providers. Yesterday I was in Vinica at the enterprise called PropRelot, and when we talked to their director, HR director, in terms of the service that we can provide as a government, he said a phrase that which surprised me immensely. And he says, "Tell me, who in this country trains what? Where can I go to get some skills and competences?" And I understood that we don't have such a system, so we need to build it from scratch. Here I'm speaking about upskilling and reskilling system. I'm not speaking about professional education system that is under the Ministry of Education. I'm saying that once a person has graduated from the professional education system, so onward education for adults, how does it look like in our country? Over there, we have enormous deficit of knowledge. I hope that together we will close this deficit and we will realize in which ways we need to inform about the providers and their whereabouts to the employers. We will jointly find answers to the questions in terms of how we as a country can give better signals for the retraining systems on the deficit skills and where we need to train those people. And we together with the retraining system, we will be able to prepare and train people in a better way, both for a specific position and another important block, another important cluster, which is mostly not satisfied. Sorry for being very categorical. This system of lifelong learning. We need to train a person not only once a person gets fired and cannot find another employment. We need people to receive up-to-date knowledge on a regular basis throughout their professional life. How large employers are doing now, but unfortunately, mostly only large employers are doing. Therefore, I wish you engaging discussions, great insights, and shaping of a shared vision of further steps. Unfortunately, I don't have the privilege of staying here for longer because the timetable looks not very humane. But here we have the director of employment department, Bogdana, with me, and I hope that Bogdan will brief me on the results of the discussions, and we will have an opportunity to move on. Thank you very much to Helvetas and to the research team for making it possible. Thank you very much, Ms. Daria. Thank you for finding time and the answers to the questions, many of which you have voiced here, we will receive later on. Dear colleagues, I would like to invite the head of the Strategic Partnership and International Cooperation Helvetas in Ukraine, Ms. Marina Kozatenko. A round of applause, please. Hello. I'm very grateful to each of you who have joined this forum today in person and online. For Helvetas, it's enormous pride to help Ukraine in such challenging times, to fight and support Ukraine in terms of saving and supporting human capital, because people are the biggest value and power of any country. Today, we see that in the labor market, there is a lack of human capital. And unfortunately, this is not a short-term problem. That's why the solutions must be holistic and systematic and based on real data. So we're glad to introduce the study dedicated to the development of adult retraining programs as one of the steps of overcoming these challenges in Ukraine. We sincerely believe that the best practices developed jointly with state partners can and will become eventually the basis for holistic policies, holistic solutions, and will become the engines of systematic changes. Thank you very much. I expect a lively and good discussion. Thank you. The discussions will be today and more than one. Dear colleagues, it's not a secret, and we've spoken about it today here, that the Ukrainian labor market faces deficit of labor force. And as experts say, this trend will be only aggravating. And this situation, one of the best solutions is development of short-term retraining programs for adults. Understanding this market is critical, which was voiced by Ms. Daria already. That's why the Helvetas study is so precious, as it encompasses a series of directions that can lay the basis for subsequent cooperation between state institutions and international organizations. In order to present the study, the key point of today, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Katerina Markevich, Manager of Economic Sustainability Helvetas Program in Ukraine. Please, good luck. In the first place, I would like to thank you all for finding an opportunity to be here at this event today. It's very important, and as Ms. Daria said, this study that was initiated is very timely and topical. Speaking about the market of requalification and raising qualification, nowadays, indeed, the need for flexible and accessible development mechanisms is critical. And such particular mechanisms can become the key priorities that will help to react to the challenges in the labor market which we faced from the beginning of the full-scale invasion. In a couple of words about the study as a whole. When we started this work, our goal was to see who is in the market providing such services in general. But in the meantime, in course of the study, we as an expert team posed the question if our education system is ready to become the foundation for subsequent development and rebuilding municipalities that have suffered, and can business obtain qualified personnel. That's why the technical team will help me with the presentation now. We can switch to the following slide already. Before I start telling you in more detail, you have your badges. On the flip side of the badge, there is a QR code for better perception. There is a presentation in Ukrainian and English language that is presented, as well as the study that has been studied by our team in Ukrainian and English language. We will be extremely glad if later on you will be able to get acquainted with it in more details. One slide back, please. So what are the today's tendencies faced by the market of requalification and education? One slide back, please. This is the issue of demographic and migrational factors that also are aggravated by the mobilizational pressure. The second issue is disproportion in educational infrastructure. When we started studying this market, we saw that three regions, Dnipropetrovsk, Poltava, and Lviv regions, have 30% of regional educational ecosystem. Here, I would like to remark that as a whole, today the regional coverage covers 24 regions and Kyiv city. But there is an interesting fact that a region can have 13 more than 280 professions that are trained for. In the meantime, the students can range 40 per entire region and up to 10,000. So we see this immense regional disproportion. Next, we see that we have certain gender and social shifts among the education seekers because the vulnerable groups of population is growing. We see that the share of women is growing in education. Each year, this percentage grows by 1%. Training. Unfortunately, by us was used by us as analysis, and the greater extent of data were used as the reference material for us to be able to illustrate certain separate trends taking place in the market and shape certain assumptions for further study. Now, what we have on the vocational labor market, well, we see that currently have over 1,700 legal entities that have the license for training. They cover at least 8,000 educational programs, curriculums, and the general license is over 254,000. Darina, during her presentation, said that it's important for us to see who on this market, whether these are state providers or private providers. So right now, the majority of the education providers are the ones that have state or communal form of ownership. But at the same time, there are other um, entrepreneurs and NGOs that, of course, are business. We began analyzing our slides. It has become clear to us that currently the educational conceptions of vocation, they are multifunctional. Reskilling, upskilling, training, they can cover different range of programs. So these are not just the primary professional preparation, but also the direct upskilling, partial reskilling, and short-term training. By the way, in part of the short-term training courses, there's one interesting fact. Since during 2 last years, the share of seekers increased in the framework of these programs, and currently they are the most efficient ones, which is also an advantage for employers because the employers need the workforce here and now. As compared to 2023-2024, this share has increased by 17%. Previously, it was 51,000 of seekers, and right now that's over 60,000. And the main professions people go to train for, of course, these are the applied professions and the ones that are in the trade or agriculture domain. The employers, how the employers join the process of um, retraining. Here you can observe the data we took from the study of the State Employment Service in 2025. And here we can see that over 33.7% of employers have trained the personnel in 2025.
And the majority in the mostly business is investing in engineer technical experts and also managers. Why does business invest? Because there's a need to be able to cover the shortage of labor force, but at the same time business is responding to internal issues that exist in the labor market of Ukraine, which are caused by the war, but also this is due to external factors, not just the geopolitical situation we are living in, but also the trends which take place in the world, like digitalization or others. And if we speak about the industry, clearly that the employers are trying to invest into this knowledge more so that their products were competitive on the European or American markets. Who are the leaders of professions? Which professions are the top professions now? The most popular are the working professions, drivers, plumbers, cooks, sellers. By the way, Helvetas is also conducting training in cooperation with educational establishments in the past 3 years. We managed to retrain in cooperation with our establishments over 1,500 persons in 6 regions of Ukraine. And also this year we continue this practice, and the majority of demand among people are the electricians or plumbers and also drivers. Um, and by the way, among women, it's also very popular are the seamstresses, and they are a business that's ready to hire these people after they go retraining. But also when we speak about the professions themselves, we have the change in the paradigm because there is a certain shift to the security sector, and such professions that are related to civilian protection, they also become more popular. Next. And the balance of skills and competencies. Well, Darina did speak about hard skills and soft skills. So today, the employers have a bigger demand for technical skills, for hard skills, but at the same time, they also note down the need in the soft skills. And this is a question of the organizational skills, communication, and also personal competence. The digital literacy is the smaller percent because this way or another, the training that takes place also includes the percentage of digitalization or some new technologies. Speaking about the proposal of the educational establishments, they can cover this need. Um, Today, 40% of educational establishments train the soft skills and also digital skills. However, a small percentage train the entrepreneurial competence. And it's very important for educational establishments in their curricula to be able to incorporate this direction, because a big number of professions can be I mean, they can and give rise to become self-employed for people, because people can both operate in the enterprise or they can open their own workshop to make some clothes or anything else. So there is a need in this, and also among the um, seekers. Interaction with the market. On this slide, I would like to focus a bit longer, because this is very important, how educational establishments and education providers interact with business. Currently, the majority, and it's not shown here, but 80% of employers and education establishment, they work in the direction of internship. So when the person comes to undergo internship, they would have some 2-3 months practice, and then they can be employed right away. And there's a huge interest in business, and Helvetas also in the framework of their projects conduct such internships and cooperates with business. We managed to cooperate with 33 businesses and to train um, 99 people. So this is one of those pillars where there is more demand for business. Next thing I would like to focus on is training programs. 71% of education establishments noted that they cooperate with business in building up their training programs. But if to bring up the new programs, clearly that the educational establishments develop them more based on their own needs assessment, and that is 42%, but businesses make up 31%. So it is significant and essential for them to cooperate with the business to hear about their needs and for this cooperation to be enhanced so that the educational program they use to be trained according to would be more feasible. This slide and the following slide are dedicated to the professional development of the teachers because this way or another, those who teach, they also to increase their competence. And many educational establishments and education providers have provided their feedback that they more orient on digital skills, soft skills, and psychological support. An interesting fact: many teachers from educational establishments specified that for them, it doesn't. It's important to incorporate the psychological support component, but they want the teachers also to be able to seek such support because there's also burnout for teachers. Many of them are IDPs, and many educational establishments were relocated. So that's the need of the educational establishment itself to take care of their staff who are providing training. And vulnerable categories of population. Unfortunately, this share of population, IDPs and people with disabilities, veterans, unfortunately, that share is going higher every year. And this way or another, the educational establishments are aware of that, and they are covering big percentage of these people during hiring or during providing trainings, and they try to also adjust their curricula to the needs of this or that target audience, because we can now observe that many veterans or people with disabilities, they can cover the need in the labor market, like replacing the youth who left. So we can see that the educational establishments do work in this direction as well. So as for employers, in their responses, they noted that they are open for this. However, they have a question on how to integrate this person into their staff and how the team will perceive this person. And business often says, yes, we are ready to work with them, we are ready to employ them. However, business quite often chooses the quicker path to produce the product faster. And not every type of business is ready to allocate some months, for some products to be produced at a slower rate. Barriers. What are the barriers for educational establishments and employers during reskilling process? Well, of course, that is lack of the material base because Helvetas and many other international organizations are providing equipment and trying to support in this vector. But then there's also lack of certain skills in personnel, because this way or another, this is also the investment of the educational establishment itself to this process. And then for business, there's a risk of losing the trained personnel, because this way or another, they cannot be forced to work in this or that business or enterprise. Of course, after they receive some skills, they are trained and then they can leave freely. And for business, that is also a huge challenge. Also, employers noted that there is a weak interaction with the education. Even though there's internship, then even though there's participation in the drafting of the curricula, but still business lacks this interaction. And we want both educational establishments and business to be open to each other. The most important changes that took place. Well, we asked the question, which positive changes do educational establishments observe and employers observe? Well, educational establishments are more optimistic because they managed to identify both the legislative level, and that is the law of Ukraine on professional education. Also, they have identified the emphasis on the digitalization and online training development. Also, educational establishment noted down that they cooperate using the vouchers of the employment service, and then there's interaction with international partners. But do employers see the advantage of what is happening in the sphere of education and reskilling? Well, they're more skeptical about this. Why? Well, because first of all, they mentioned that they did not have sufficient information about this. So this is again about communication and the opportunity of the employers to be part of this process, to cooperate both with the local authorities who are responsible for education, curriculum, and the educational establishments, for them to be more included. The priority changes for the future. Here in brief, each of the target audiences and employers and educational establishments identified that digitalization, dual education, cooperation with the businesses these are all important things. By the way, the employers, they are having a more strategic view at this, as they noted down that it matters for them so that the content of education would be in line with the current technology and standards of the EU. And also the professional orientation and popularization of the working professions was carried out. These are the ones that businesses lack. And the last slide, in brief, obviously you will be able to familiarize yourself in more details with this study. So the conclusions we drew, what is lacking? First of all, we need to have the dialogue between different stakeholders, business, education, legislative level. Next is regional adaptation, because we need to remove the regional disproportions and to consider the specifics of the communities and the needs of the local labor markets. And here the state employment service can facilitate this, and they can basically strengthen the role in the regions. Also, the inclusiveness and social integration, because nowhere without it, as we are to support the priority groups, these priority groups of veterans, women, and people with disabilities, and not to forget to include into our national curriculum, whether it's a national or private provider, education provider, there to combine training together with the psychological guidance and inclusive environment. And the last is the norms and regulations, but that's a totally different topic of discussion. You can go through the proposals that were provided by our experts in more detail in the presentation. So thank you, everyone. Sorry, maybe it took a bit longer. And we do have a hope that you will follow us in LinkedIn and Facebook, because our organization carries out lots of studies on labor market every year and on reskilling, upskilling. So we do hope that this is going to be valuable for you. Thank you. Thank you, Maria. We are thanking the entire team of the experts. We can feel how great the work was that you have conducted, but I'm reminding you that using the QR code on your badges, you can get all of these data and basically to study them attentively. I'm sure that during the presentation there were many insights, and I guess we have to proceed to the discussion. We call the panel discussion as Reskilling and Upskilling from Challenges to Solutions. And in this, that's where we're going to move forward. So now I would like to invite to this stage Bogdan Matvichuk, head of the Professional Vocational Education Directorate, Lilia Hrabowska, the General Director of the Director of Professional Education, Ministry of Education and Science, Irina Shumik. Thank you, supporting with the applause. And then Deputy Head of Topsil Food, Yulia Toshenko. And also online, we're going to have Mr. Shiro Nakata, who's a senior economist, Europe and Central Asia, Education Global Practice. And the discussion will be moderated by Maria Kozachenko, Helvetas. Greetings. Thank you for joining in to our first panel discussion. I would remind you that we have called it the Reskilling and Upskilling from Challenges to Solutions. And we would like to focus on the positive stuff, not on the negative. Katarina, thank you so much because you have just presented the results of the findings of the study where we can see that in Ukraine there is already a big network of providers, education providers, and at the same time, we realize that the efficiency of the system is not characterized by the existence of the program, but by the way the state policies are streamlined and the tools of the quick reskilling, regulatory field, and most importantly is the actual demand of the employers. So among the key findings, we have identified the need in the stronger cooperation of stakeholders whom we try to gather all here, the representatives of all stakeholders, the regional approach, the practice-oriented short module programs, all of these can be solutions.
Let us listen to our experts in these subject matters and let us discuss how we envisage the building a system that reacts faster to the market needs. Faster because today the decisive factor is speed. Mr. Bogdan, let us start with you, with the central level. Studies demonstrate that not necessarily universal solutions, fit all solutions work through regional disbalances. And the system maybe requires synchronization between study policies and needs of employers. In your opinion, does the state need to build a framework through the unified national rules or give more freedom to the regions in shaping the solutions for the local labor market? Am I audible? I would like to welcome you at this event and thank you very much for the presentation. It was very interesting, and maybe we will also reflect on it. One of the vulnerable categories that requires assistance, and also I would like to refer people who, due to certain conditions, situational conditions, or in the country, just forgot what it takes to work. Maybe because they cared for a kid, or they just forgot how the contemporary market of labor functions. Concerning a question in which way we need to interact, in this case, there is no single centralized decision on whether it should be centralized or decentralized. It must be a flexible system. On our part, we develop digital tools, the OBRI system, which must start from fresh now, but it must become the entrance point both for the state and for the employment center, for the regional level as well. And the employer is the central point. Why it's so important? There will be no unified decision which skills must be available with the job seeker. Only the employer can give an answer to that. The territorial municipality can assist with the living conditions if it is an IDP. So we well understand because IDPs have the highest rate of request or need or precondition for housing should they be employed. Without municipal support, the state will not be able to do anything because only the municipalities know which housing they have and how they can provide for that. That's why in this case, we can say that through digitalization of processes, we can tune this bridge between the employer and the worker. Concerning other questions, and the need of regulatory shaping, we need to approach it more flexibly. With more flexibility, we must build certain principles which are interesting for the state, not to have training for the sake of training. Issuing vouchers is a great tool which provides not very good results because a person arrives, grabbed that voucher, went to get some education. Who has asked the person to get that, to seek that training? How the person chose the specific program? Maybe it was some psychological support, but it's not what the state requires. The state requires an employer to identify the exact criterion and okay, here we had a study on hard skills more, but from what I hear as an employer, it's more even about soft skills. I see that I lack people, even if they are very knowledgeable. I lack them, their ability to adapt to the labor market and adapt for evolving within this labor market. That's why we as a country would like to launch new projects which were uptuned for the needs for the employers. If the employer says, I need a worker, maybe the employer has already found the exact worker, and he says, I need a worker with specific knowledge. We jointly with the State Employment Service find for this worker, and he says, well, he's all right, but I need to train him a little bit more. So we as a state must react to that. So the principal ideas here is that we do need regulation, but not as strict to make sure each municipality could participate in this process. And we should not indicate exactly, because very often we hear from municipalities like, it were you who told us to do it in this exact way, not to fix thresholds and not to establish strict regulations. The employer is interested in the opportunities for the municipalities, and the next interested player is the municipality, which receives taxes. That's why the territorial municipality must be the key stakeholder interested in it. Thank you. I will not take more time. Thank you very much for a well-grounded answer. You poured some oil into our fuel because I wanted to shift from the political framework to practical tools, and thank you for recalling the voucher program because that's very interesting to ask Ms. Lilia on the practical tools as a representative of the State Employment Service. One of the most noticeable programs are your programs, in particular the vouchers. From your professional point of view, what do you think? What will become the most resultative in the nearest years? Upscaling of this program, it's evolving, maybe broadening short-term programs based on the State Employment Service training programs, or reinforcement of the regional role of State Employment Service in terms of skill development. Do you see yourself there or not? Hello, I'm glad to see you here, all of you. Very interesting study that you've done. Of course, from the point of view of the State Employment Service, we see not only one program of requalification and retraining, not only in vouchers. Indeed, this vouchers program does not exclude the possibility of a person who already has employment and has its employer to go and get additional training in a specific specialization. But there are moments when the voucher program allows raising qualification and allows upskilling, especially in terms of medical and pedagogical workers who require upskilling. badly. There are many institutions of education that have changed their educational programs. Those are not only professional education, but also higher education, which updated their educational program to the needs of the employers that satisfy the upskilling of workers. We're speaking about lifelong learning and human capital, which for us is critical. But of course, in terms of professional education, nowadays, I believe that, and Mr. Bogdan said about digital solutions. We have a decree for grant for professional development that will start working this year. The paradigm is different. The paradigm requires organization of training of people who are not employed, who do not have any place of work. Those are the people who we can bring into economic activity in the labor market for the needs of a specific employer in a specific region. And do some training in an education institution has willingness to do that. But I would like to tell you that in the end of 2025, we completed a wonderful project. Educational institutions participate and conduct training according to the international projects. And I would like to tell you that implementation of one of the last year projects by the professional and technical education, I think it's not a secret that we have 8 really functioning centers, but 3 are not functional because 3 of them are on the occupied territory. One of the centers is in Kramatorsk, but today it has damaged premises. That's why the training is not implemented there. And 8 others implemented an international project that aimed at evolving of educational programs, curriculums in cooperation with employers. In course of this project, we developed cooperation with 40 employers of regions. Since the beginning of my work in the State Employment Service, I can tell you that not a single time it was that an event at international level, one employer stands up and says that I don't know, I didn't know, it's the first time I hear that there is such an institution of professional education in my region. Indeed, the popularization done by the educational institution for short-term training for the needs of employers is critical. Without an employer, the availability of any educational program is out of place. If the employer says that I do need not a welder, but a person who will be able to know how to perform a specific operations which I require, and on top of that, this person must have communicational skills which I need. That's the principal issue to satisfy the need in the region, the need of the employer that exists by an educational institution who can close that gap. Why not? All the teachers, all the educators, there are educational institutions with lower level, with medium level, and there are those who have a very high level of training. They have very good curriculums. They have success in this sphere. We should not over-regulate this process. It must be flexible and free. We must have way more opportunities for the educational institution to identify the different levels of their services. Now we have many more variants, not only to conduct full-fledged education with partial qualification. If a person has experience and the person arrives to the qualification center and confirms its qualification and has the document confirming and allowing the person to be employed, even that's an obligatory feature for a specific profession, because we do have professions, listed professions that require a document confirming professional education. That's why expanding and broadening the opportunities is very much required. We need to include new programs compatibility programs. We identify the directions of the economic activities that we need as of today urgently. That's all important for institutions, for employers, and for the people who must become economically active in the labor market today. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lilia. Thank you, State Service of Employment, for providing quick tools of reacting to the changes in the labor market. The logical next question is the system managing to adapt on time and change their game rules according to the continuous demands of the market? Ms. Arena, in your opinion, the new law of Ukraine on professional education. It's often called a critical step toward a more flexible education system for adults. In your opinion, which change is will in this new law will bring closer the professional education of adults to the real needs of the business and of the labor market? That's my favorite question. I will possibly start with saying that I do not know a single country in the world where education is advancing the skills or satisfying skills 100%. That's impossible because technologies are skyrocketing and businesses and employers implement them faster than the system has time to react. Still, speed of this reaction is critical, and the possibility to bring closer to this speed with updating the technologies is critical. So, what was happening over the last 8 years in the professional education? Well, in 2019, the modernization and transformation of professional education system started, and many innovations were just piloted. Last year, we finally adopted the law that specified specific steps. The law fixed and established specific steps, so now it will be impossible to change that anymore. I will join the words of gratitude for the study and survey. I can't say that some things were groundbreaking or just opened our eyes, but now we have a good proven basis to move the professional education policies. What we saw on this survey and the steps that were already made, that's a increase in upskilling and reskilling programs in the formal education institutions, something that was unavailable or very few previously. That's a complicated shift. Ms. Daria has said already that unfortunately in our society we do not have a well-shaped culture of education, of love-learn education, and notwithstanding what you're saying, still Soviet time idea that once you get a profession, you're a professional for a lifetime, it's still among the human minds, but still we need to evolve and change the profession once every 5 years. The demand for skills is very different today. I'm always concerned for the interpreters, for the philologists doing the interpreting services today, because it seems to me that a couple of years more and AI will replace, I will maybe not replace, but lower considerably the need for these professionals, because personally I use AI tools and try to translate documents from all sorts of languages, and the quality is very high. The same thing happens with professional education. And for Ukraine, this issue is even more complicated. Why today we're speaking about raising qualification and retraining? Because we have a high deficit of professionals in the labor market. And here we need to analyze the data and understand if we are able to close this deficit even through retraining or activizing the groups of population that as of today are inactive in the labor market. We motivate women to come back to the labor market. We work with the IDPs, and we do our best to bring those young people who visit educational institutions and give them broader skills and broader knowledge to make sure they can flexibly react to such or another request and adapt to work, looking for employment more quickly. Bhutan mentioned people who do not study and do not work. It's interesting, but we need to compare that with the percentage available in other countries. In fact, in Ukraine, it's historically happened. By the way, we will double check it with another study, but that percentage is not as high as in Europe. Why? Because in previously we did not have that percentage of that big percentage of migrants, because mostly that is such type of population is mostly represented by former immigrants. We do expect that we will have to involve additional resources for immigration of population.
We will still have to do this. And here, the system of professional education is in that phase where we are trying to prep it to these challenges. On the one hand, by creating the maximum opportunities for the proposal of different programs per request of the seeker, who has already identified this for themselves, but also per request of the business and the employers who do require these type of experts or specialists, or for the reskilling efforts. And we cannot say that we need locksmith today, because that's not it. We need a specialist who knows to also be able to operate the machines. And this is a huge challenge for the education system. And this was mentioned in the studies, like we need to find these machine tools. How do we train personnel using them? And here we mentioned different types of cooperation. One of them is that it's not a very good idea to have such workshops in the educational establishment. Somewhere we could use business for this to equip such labs. But second, where do we find well motivated you know, people who would be able to get these skills and then to pass them on? Because uh, I wouldn't say that there's a low level of the pedagogical pay, but for professionals, if the person can have a salary in the labor market that is 3 times more than when they go to the vocational school to work. The law offers the following: it has simplified and deregulated the part that referred to reskilling and upskilling. Before, one had to have a license to conduct such training programs and to do attestation, but currently the law permits the educational establishments to conduct certain trainings, to develop the curriculum of different levels. And I agree with Lilia, who said that maybe the educational establishment, by offering this or that educational program, can do the evaluation, and part of the skills that were already gained, or the existing ones, like knowledge and skills, they could be reconsidered, and this way to reduce the timeline of studies. The Ministry of Education and Science right now has the project of the standard of the professional education, and it's going to be for 1 more month at the public discussion. So I'm inviting you to view it. And we are even offering different norms on the term of the studies for persons who, for example, have some previously received higher education of certain level, when we realize that they have already received certain skills, and that's how the duration of the training can be regulated. There's a challenge, of course, because there must be the document about the education. Before, there were certain requirements, yes, for licensing, for attestation of the educational establishments to put such programs into places. Now there aren't any. So the state doesn't bear the responsibility of recognizing these documents. So what we call as the state sample document, this was the document that was recognized by the state because it had to be in line with certain procedures. But right now, the educational establishments and the education providers can independently issue such documents. So the question is, will they be recognized by our employers and business? Because the ministry has been receiving the questions, how do we verify the document, whether it is valid, whether it does attest that this person has gained this or that level of qualification. That's an interesting thing, but also a challenge. And Daria spoke about mapping and understanding of what's happening. Well, decentralization, debureaucratization did a good thing for Ukraine because it opened up the opportunities, and the shortage of human capitals was relevant even before the full-scale invasion. And then, in fact, separate, like to confirm the or verify the previously gate level of education could be done by uh, the registers. But on the other hand, there's a question of quality. How do we check the quality of the skills they gained? And this is one more challenge for the qualification centers, for business, education services. And micro qualification could be relevant here because what we call as a micro credentials or micro qualification in line with the regulation of the EU, the sense is that it's not the qualification that's recognized by the state, but these are the credentials that are recognized by the different employers which do the description of this qualification, and they are to verify and to provide for the quality of such trainings. Therefore, I would like to also add that in the system of vocational training, the emphasis has shifted in the part of this system management, where the big role is given to the employer. Why are we doing this? To increase the level of dual programs, to increase the practical component, for programs to be developed per request of business, together with the business. And this will be put into practice via supervisory boards, which are to be established in the professional education establishments. 50% of the composition of these supervisory boards will be businesses and employers, and not just those who were selected, but as envisaged by the law, the ones who actively participate co-fund the activity of the institution and providing work places. These employers will also have to be in line with certain criteria, and they, according to the law, will get part of the powers the founder used to have. So this is the actual tool the employers asked for and received. And here we hope that by the end of this year, in our many professional education establishments, these supervisory boards will be launched. And we are now conducting the preparatory work. Well, but there's one threat. Sometimes the employers themselves underestimate the level of involvement that must be present, and whether such people, whether there will be such people who will not treat this formally. And that's another thing, and that's also our common responsibility of us in business, for us to do it in such a way that so that the system of professional education would benefit from both the business and the system. Well, one more thing. We are used to the system of formal education, or formal educational establishments are just for formal education. Well, when they get children after school, they train them and they let them go. We have a very big system of education. We are now even speaking about the optimization of it because after we analyze the demographic situation, we realize that maybe we don't need that many. And the government has approved the methodological guidelines for optimization of educational, professional, and vocational education. And everyone is engaged there, businesses, communities, all of them are the main stakeholders of the professional education system. What matters here is that to use these resources properly, because we may develop new policies, we may establish some new establishments, but they need to be equipped, and there's certain preparation must take place when we already have a big network of establishments who are just to be given the additional track and tools for them to be able to work and operate in this sphere. But I'm not, of course, trying to get rid of certain powers, because there must be certain transformation of the establishments, because there are things that we are used to, yes, in our society, and the same refers to these establishments. They are used to teaching people in a certain way, and especially if we have to train adults, and that doesn't require the same pedagogical approaches. They have to understand that the timeline in the educational establishment mustn't be from 9 a.m. but from 4 p.m. because people might have to work. So these seem to be obvious things, but we're not always aware of this. So a lot has changed in the system, and this report is a proof, but there's still a lot to do. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you, Irina. That there's a lot of work ahead of us, that is for sure. And so we now heard about the regulatory changes, we heard about the practical schools, about the state framework. The key question is, does the employer feel these changes in practice? And today we have invited big business to our conversation, Silpo Food, because they are represented in all regions of Ukraine, almost all. And I think you are daily trying to adapt, to train your employees. And you see the systemic challenges and local challenges or gaps in skills. You, as business and other big companies, you are forced quite often to build up your own training systems, to do this quickly, yes, to do stuffing quickly. What, in your opinion, is to change in the professional education system and in interaction with the state for business to be able to rely on the external providers more often, but not being forced to create their own internal systems? Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to participate in this panel discussion. I am thanking also the Armed Forces of Ukraine for us being here and having this opportunity to work. Answering the question, well, clearly that business, just like other sectors, is facing many challenges and facing the shortage of human capital. We are working with it on the daily basis. And I agree with Irina that these challenges were there even before the full-scale invasion, and we're still learning to cope with it. If to speak from the point of view of the business where I operate, and if to give you all the details how we have organized this, we are looking for interaction with the education sector, not just for it to be there, but this has to be a practical tool to help involve personnel to our company and to retain the employees. We see that a working tool is the tool that helps to quickly integrate the employee into working processes, smoothly, seamlessly. And us as a business, we see big potential in dual education. Why? Because dual education enables to reduce the barrier between the expectations of the employer and the actual knowledge of the pupils. Second, it enables to quicker um, integrate to active and talented graduates to find a place in the business. And third, it's the opportunity for business to set the rules they are interested in certain skills for future employees. I would also like to um, pay your attention to the study of the European Committee showing that 20 30% of the graduates with dual education they can get employed quicker rather than students from the regular educational establishments who receive the theoretical knowledge without practical base. What can SILPO receive when employing the students who receive dual education? Well, first of all, it's a staff reserve, and we are saving the budget because we are business. Then we have to invest less in attracting qualified personnel. And also, there are the following types of involvement of employees to us as a production practice. But we think that this tool is not that comprehensive because practice doesn't shape the specialist. It's just a short period of time. And when the student comes to you and has some theoretical knowledge in the educational establishments, but they are not always relevant. And we need to retrain them. And that's where cooperation basically stops because there must be interaction in place to be able to cover some point by point needs, but this doesn't tackle our global need. I can share we have many participants who stay after the production practice, and here mutual cooperation is the will of the practitioners, their ambitions, and readiness of us as business to be flexible and to invest into programs of manufacturing practice. And that's how we can have good collaboration. Well, going back to dual education topic, an important role here is in state regulation and the expectations the state has, the expectations of the business support for example, maybe there could be some, if our business hires certain categories, we would like to have some VAT exemption for hiring them, or maybe if we train some categories of pupils who come and get practical skills in our company, would also like to have some benefits. So we can also view a nice benchmark of Moldova, who in a short period of time has implemented their reform of dual education and the benefits they receive. First, the employer joins the shaping elaborations of the curriculum, and all of the considerations are taken into account. And basically, this is like a tailored training per one employer. And then the employer can also receive support, financial support from the state, and the pupils and students, they can quickly adapt in conditions created by the employer, and the graduates find workplaces, the ones that they are interested in, the ones that can give them what they were looking for. McKinsey and company in their studies show that there's a really great interaction when there's a combination of dual education, production practices, and some platforms, training platforms between educational establishments and employers, which are created for engagement of employees. This type of collaboration indeed is very practical, and the employers who learn to work with this, they manage the skills gaps twice as fast. Therefore, if to sum up, clearly that every business doesn't have another option right now rather than developing their own programs, training programs, or adapting them, or making them with consideration of all specifics of the generations, making some training videos for one category of pupils, some paper, electronic programs for others. So businesses are ready to cooperate with the state bodies, and I'm going to share with you and say that as of since last year, we had a good collaboration with employment centers, and we have begun a fruitful cooperation. And here I would like to thank Lilia and her colleagues and her manager Yulia for basically cooperating with us, and we gave our expectations to recruiters on the profile of our candidate, what they should look like. And we have conducted a few meetings where we have conducted the training on our needs of the pain of the employer, and the colleagues basically helped us out with it, and we get a number of meetings from the employment center using our new profiles, which is very valuable.
Thank you very much. We will proceed in the same direction. That's why fixing the existing situation will be possible only thanks to joint cooperation between businesses, educational center, and the state, of course. Thank you very much. It was a wonderful baseline under our panel discussion. You summed up the importance of the dialogue between all the stakeholders. There is nothing even to add to what you said. I would like to bring our discussion to a different level, from the Ukrainian market to the international level. Thank you very much. Now we're grateful to the World Bank for joining our study, for your expert assistance. Mr. Shiro, welcome. We would like to raise the issue that was voiced today. It is lifelong learning approach, which in your opinion, what are the preconditions that must have taken place in Ukraine to make sure that this approach becomes systematic, becomes an entire system and not a set of sporadic initiatives? And if we look at Ukraine in the context of recovery and deficit of staff, in your opinion, which approaches to the development of skills are the most perspective for quick increase in human capital? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for inviting the World Bank team to this wonderful event. My name is Shiro Nakata. I'm a senior economist with the education team of the World Bank. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the Helvetas team for completing this very meaningful and extremely timely study on the adult education and training in Ukraine. And we have been very honored to be part of the partnership group that collaborated over this effort. The World Bank team has also been conducting a number of studies in the reskilling, upskilling space recently. Recently we have, for instance, completed the study on the effectiveness of the active labor market policy programs. And also we completed another piece on the skills development in the transport sector, working with the Ministry of Transport. We are also undertaking the ASA the study, but they're looking more comprehensively at the reskilling ecosystem. Our IFC, International Finance Corporation colleagues are working currently with the enterprises to strengthen their delivery capacity for the enterprise-based training program. We have been working with our government counterpart and also the private sector counterpart to try to help strengthen the reskilling ecosystem in Ukraine. So in this context, today's event is extremely timely and very relevant to what we are also trying to do in Ukraine. So with that, we are extremely grateful. And I'm sure some of my colleagues are actually attending this forum either in person or online, like myself. And thanks for this very important question. In the space of the lifelong learning or adult education and training or upskilling or reskilling, whatever the way we call it, I think this is probably the most important agenda we have to tackle in the skills development space moving forward. Of course, there are a number of issues in the initial vocational and education training section, we know, but this is adult education and training is a new issue that we have to tackle in Ukraine, and we have to do that with a sense of urgency. The one thing I can say for sure for now is that the system has gone through so many changes, including, of course, the adoption of the new law on vocational education. In my opinion, this has been a landmark legislation that actually strengthened the environment for offering the upskilling and reskilling by the vocational education institution. It gave a lot of autonomy and the incentive to the institution to work with enterprises to offer various kinds of reskilling, upskilling training programs. And we have seen a growing level of interest from the enterprise side to work with the training providers to offer the dual education training program that Ms. Yulia has mentioned, and also to develop the joint training programs that's tailored to certain needs of the enterprises. And of course, there are a number of improvement that has been made by various projects and investing in the improvement of the training environment in various vocational institutions, and also the universities, higher education institutions, which also offer a number of upskilling and reskilling programs. And of course, the vocational training centers under the CES also has gone through a significant level of improvement over the past years. So those are the significant improvements that we have witnessed over the past years. Moving forward, a couple of areas that I see based on our recent analysis that we haven't cracked the code yet, if you will. The number one is that we still need to strengthen this coordination across the different sectors. For instance, the coordination and communication between the two main ministries that are involved in the reskilling and upskilling, which are the Ministry of Economy and the Ministry of Education and Science. The way we see it, there are still ways to improve the coordination and communication across our government counterparts. Today's forum is an extremely important opportunity to further deepen this type of collaboration and communication across the different sectors. So we would love to see this kind of initiative to continue. Another area is integration of let's say that the enterprises and non-formal training providers. As I mentioned, that the enterprises are becoming more and more willing to participate in the skills development programs and collaborate with the education and training providers. And we have seen the many enterprise colleagues who are offering an excellent training programs. Currently, they are mainly focusing on the training of their own employees. But in our conversation, we have repeatedly discussed that a willingness to actually train the new staff, either for themselves or for the sector as a whole. And this is a great opportunity that we can exploit further or expand more if we have a collaboration system to work with such enterprises with the training capacities. As you know, that some of the enterprises, they have academies, they have universities, they have centers. So all these training capacities are going to be extremely important that if we want to expand the capacity of offering the reskilling, upskilling in an urgent manner. There are a huge number of non-formal training providers, meaning that the private institutions that's offering the various types of the training programs meeting the various needs of enterprises, and programs are often offered in a hugely different formats and the length and under different modalities. And diversity is one way, it's very positive, but at the same time, we also need to make sure that a certain quality is also there, so that there's a need for some kind of quality assurance in order for us to have a more meaningful and effective partnership with those non-formal providers. If we look at the global examples, there are many countries that actually has integrated these non-formal providers and also enterprise-based training centers into a publicly supported reskilling and upskilling ecosystem. Just take one example. I just happened to be from Japan. So in Japan, we also have CES. Each province has its own CES. And over there, they also have a partnership with the Ministry of Education. And what they do is that the Ministry of Education has a responsibility for endorsing the short-term reskilling and upskilling training programs offered by the non-formal training providers. This is not exactly the licensing program, but it's more like an endorsement program to ensure that those programs are operated with the elements that are important for the reskilling and upskilling program. For instance, that they should have at least 50% of the programs as a workplace-based learning or project-based learning to develop those work-ready skills or soft skills. And also they should have the partner to co-develop the training program. So there are a number of criteria based on which the Ministry of Education assess those non-formal training providers and training programs. And once they are endorsed, they become eligible to receive the equivalent of the training voucher benefits. And same goes for the enterprise-based training programs. In Japan, the Ministry of Economy, they are responsible for endorsing the enterprise-based training programs, and that's specifically targeting either the new employee or the unemployed workers. And again, there are a number of criteria to assess ensure the minimum quality and minimum relevance of those enterprise-based training programs. And once they are endorsed by the Ministry of Economy, again, they are also becomes eligible to receive the equivalent of the training voucher benefits. So these are just a few examples, but we see there are significant areas where we can still strengthen the coordination and integration of those enterprise-based trainings and also non-formal training providers. The lastly, what I think is also another major area that we still need to track to have a more holistic and inclusive reskilling ecosystem is also what other participants also discussed, is the how to ensure the accessibility to the veterans and IDPs, and especially for the people with disabilities. The, I have visited the number of training institutions and universities. However, in terms of the accessibility or universal access facility to those education and training institutions, I believe there are still more work to be done to make sure that people with disabilities would feel more comfortable accessing those campuses and also interacting with other students. The issue is not only the physical infrastructure, of course, the institutional policies and then overall culture of accepting and accommodating those people in special needs is extremely important. So, so this is area I see where we still need to strengthen more. And as we all know, this is a extremely critical areas that there'll be more decommissioned the veterans to come back with the various types of disabilities, physical and psychological ones. So it's incumbent upon us to make sure that our employment policies and the skills development systems are actually up to the standard to be able to accept them, welcome them back, and then reintegrate them smoothly back into the society and today's economy. And this is, I think we owe this to them to make sure that happens, because they have done so much to the country. So, so that's all I wanted to say at this point. And thanks once again for this question and this forum, and to the Helvetas team for the excellent collaboration.
Пане Широ, дякуємо вам.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shiro, for such a wonderful answer, for such practical commentaries. There is a lot to think together and to discuss here. Thank you very much for working for the sake of Ukraine, and I hope we will proceed with the dialogue further on. I have 6 more questions to you, but unfortunately we have no more time to discuss them. I suggest discussing many more interesting questions during our coffee break. Thank you very much for a well-grounded discussion. Please do not leave over the coffee break. Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation and for wonderful moderation of the panel. Indeed, we have a small 10-minute coffee break. After that, we will have a very interesting cluster discussing reskilling of adults from policy shaping to practical implementation. Please come back in 10 minutes.
are back from coffee break. Thank you for taking your seats in the room. You didn't do it yet, please join us. You can take your coffee with you, you can take water, pastry, and we are inviting you to the room. We are now going to proceed with our second panel discussion, Human Capital, Learning as a Path to Resilience and Professional Fulfillment. And before I invite our panelists to the floor, I would like to share some statistics data with you. So the data showed, the study shows that almost 90%, so the majority of the listeners, they study within 20 professional groups and almost half only per 5 directions. If to give more specifics, these are professions in the direction of agrarian, security, technical, and services sectors. Generally, in the majority of regions, the directions of studies are in line with the relevant vacancies, mainly for the drivers, plumbers, locksmith, cooks, and medical employees. In the course of the studies, we have also identified big imbalances, and that is in the part of infrastructure and construction spheres. This shows the need to have a more flexible and targeted approach to shaping training programs. In this panel discussion, we'll have representatives from different spheres. We're going to be able to consider the reskilling from different perspectives, from the level of shaping policies up until training programs. I would like to invite our speakers to the stage. So the project coordinator of social impact Beetroot Academy, Anastasia Petrova. Also, with great pleasure, I would like to invite Director of Kharkiv Vocational College of Construction and Industry, Natalia Yuklaevska. Please join us, take your seat. And also, the representative of NGO Divergent Women, Yulia Tsibulska. And also, I would like to invite the advisor of the German Society Interaction GIZ, Artem Koval. So let's begin. We have 40 minutes for this discussion, so I'll be kindly asking you to be laconic and a few technical moments. When you answer the questions, please keep the microphone closer to your microphone so that our online audience could hear us. So, question number one for you, Anastasia. I know that in the framework of cooperation with Helvetas, Truth Academy is providing trainings for IT specialists. For you create conditions for participants for them to be able to get a better job or to get more income thanks to the digital skills. And I would like to ask you, what is how big the demand is for the non-informal training now, and which approaches turned out to be most efficient when it's not about training in general but about reskilling of people who combine this process with their job or family circumstances. Thank you for your question. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I would like to present the Academy in few sentences. As of 2014, Beetroot Academy has been providing trainings for veterans and IDPs and other vulnerable categories of population who need support, economic support, maybe because they lost their job or they changed, like when the veteran cannot work at the previous workplace and they need to have remote job. So we've been doing this for 11 years now. So the approaches and the reality has been changing in Ukraine since 2014. Before pandemic, we were operating offline, and then in Kharkiv, Odessa, Mariupol, we had physical schools there. And as of 2020, during pandemic, we switched to online. And as of 2022, during large-scale invasions, we realized that we need to stay online because many categories we work with do not have the opportunity to travel to offline events. So online education helped us make it more accessible for them because many of our students combine training with work and taking care of children. Also, we have the members of the families of the veterans who take care of the veterans who undergo rehabilitation. For example, the partner is studying to increase the economic safety of the family to find a better job. That's why we have continued working online. This doesn't only give the access, but also level of engagement of those categories who live in the remote areas, in the villages, or those who do not have funds to travel. So we are focusing on attracting more and more students from regions who do not have the big IT hubs like Kyiv, Odessa, Kharkiv, Lviv. But we have many students who come from the amalgamated communities, from villages, and this is a big result for us as well because more than 65% of people from who are from smaller towns. And we're also focused on engaging more women. 60% of our students are women. And except for the online aspect, another important thing for a successful reintegration and reskilling is a constant support, motivation, because we often see from all projects that from the moment the person is to select the career or profession until the employment, that's the process along which we are providing support. Training is not sufficient. We need to help people navigate through which profession they want to get, not to choose the most popular or the one that's more profitable, but this must be the profession that's going to meet their requirements and their skills and talents. The training course lasts from 2 until 5 months. It's very intense. They have three online classes a week. And after classes, they have homework and go through theory in our learning management system. And such duration helps them get profession quicker as compared to going for bachelor's degree to become a programmer. They may not have that much time, so this approach helps, the practice helps. Our main goal is to give practical knowledge so that at the end of the training course they could shape their own portfolio. For example, when they study programming during the training course, they can already operate with some case, some example, real project, or something they want to develop for themselves. At the end of the training course, they can use it as a part of their portfolio for the potential employer. I wanted to clarify, you spoke about cases. Is there a case that inspiring you? Was there some, success story that echoes with you? Many, many. I will try to choose one. You can approach me during the break. I will tell you more. So one of the stories, we had a veteran who studied with us on the course of project management in IT. It means how to develop and manage the websites. And then he went, after the training, he went to the platform for veterans that combines all opportunities for veterans, training, psychological support, and he was the manager of that platform and was responsible for its development. So this was a full circle for us. Did you say that you had a few more statements? Well, I can actually comment on. Okay, tell us what you want to say, of course. Fresh conclusion. When implementing this project for veterans, we realized that you need to start with the basics, providing also digital literacy, because teaching digital literacy makes them not being afraid to go to study where there are some IT abbreviations, but when everything is new. If it's a veteran who comes from other professions, not from digital professions, for them, this is too fast. And we saw that it's hard for them to go and study the programming course or marketing training course or testing. It's too early for them. At this stage, many veterans would refuse and they lost motivation. So we had to tackle this challenge by introducing two activities. First, we started holding events for veterans where we would explain about these professions. We did it in the rehabilitation centers in Kiev and other regions where we implement the project together with the Helvetas and also the veterans hubs in Kiev. And these events help them to overcome the barrier and to see that this is the teacher that will do the training course who talks about this profession, and then it doesn't feel that difficult. Plus, the training courses that we are about to launch, and these are the prep digital literacy training course that will help them first to use the calendar, the email, the Zoom, basic knowledge. Yes, many of us think that everybody knows about this, but that's not true. That's why this was an important conclusion we made. Cool, thank you for sharing these insights. And let's move from private sector to state communal sector. I have a question for Natalia, who represents Kharkiv Vocational College of Construction and Industry. So how fast does the communal system ready to adapt to needs of the adult listeners? How fast? Well, using example of my college, I will say that first short-term training courses and the graduation took place in 2020. In 2022, we could not work physically because of the constant shellings, but we were developing programs and we are still working on it. And now we have 57 programs of our own for short term training for adults. And we are constantly upgrading them, changing them, adding something. So, depending upon the needs of the labor market, we are adjusting our programs. So, this is about the speed of response to changes taking place. I know that on support of Helvetas, you have introduced training for adults as of 2023 in Kharkiv. I have a question about scaling up. What are the challenges when it's about scaling up the services of reskilling for adults, maybe on the level of the city or the region? There is always the challenge. The first challenge is the quality. We have realized that quality is love, yes, because everybody knows that the person who is inspired, they treat their case with love and fulfill their job with better quality. So during the short-term training courses, the priority for us is to inspire them, to um, give them that piece of love for profession they start mastering. So for me, there are there's a question now. Love is hard skills or soft skills? That's why I invite you to think about it. But I think that it doesn't work. One without another doesn't work. So the short-term training programs or trainings in general, hard skills do not operate without soft skills. So as for Kharkiv, if to speak about inclusion, inclusion is not only people with disabilities. Kharkiv is an inclusive city nowadays because we had the change of circumstances the entire city lives in. And all people, like pedagogical staff, management of the region, of the city, up until IDPs, everyone um, know what inclusive approach is. So during short-term training programs, type of education, I would not only focus on people with disabilities. So when you work on the quality and if you have the inspiration in your heart, people who complete your training course are the agents of your professional orientation activity of the college. You can't just ask them to recommend it if you did not gave them your piece of heart during training, something practical. They will not bring others to you. That's why what works best is when the graduate of the short-term training course bring other students, new students. That's how it works, and we are very proud that business started knocking on our door, telling us, "We know that you have trained, and you were, and somebody has recommended you to us." That's really wonderful because once of the deputy head of one very powerful entrepreneurs came to our electricians training course because he wanted to know how we do it and what we do. And we were very anxious, but during the training, when the training course was over, we broke his stereotypes because he thought that we were just some type of low-level school. And he deep dived and saw how it actually happened. He got the knowledge, and now he goes and talks about it everywhere. For us, this was the challenge at first, but then we benefited from this so much that we don't even have to speak about our quality ourselves. So others do that for you. I see. What other stereotypes did you have to tackle in your profession? Are there some myths or stereotypes? Many myths. First myth starts with the first grade of the secondary school when the low level of lessons are held, when people grow in that environment as people who will never work. But now Kharkiv is in pajamas state because everybody is studying, going to school wearing pajamas, so to say. And then you have to give them some tools and they have to work for 8 hours physically, but they're not ready for that. What do you mean? Because of online trainings? Yes, pajamas because they study from home, because of low level also physical load, because they don't do physical exercises. Do you remember we used to have cleaning at schools by the pupils? What is that? This is the preparation of your workplace and cleaning after you did your job. We are teaching the children to do the world around them beautiful, clean. But we stopped doing that. And then these people for 11 years were doing nothing. They were just lying on the sofa, going online. And then you tell them, okay, so here's bricks, please build up something. But they cannot physically do it. So for hard skills to be active, you have to develop soft skills. And one of the most powerful tools is the physical exercise. And basically the physical education, physical culture that are going to be very supportive for people during doing their main job, because people need to unload and we need to set new complexes that will help them to work for 8 hours. Thank you, Natalia. I'll have more questions for you, but a bit later. Now let's go to public sector. And I would like to say that Julia's organization, that's called Divergent Women, is the mediator between the job seekers and employers. And Julia, I have one question for you. How do you help women to master the new profession that are not typical, and how to overcome the barriers which occur when entering this new labor market? Thank you for your question. So I would like to also introduce my organization. We operate as of 2018. We were established, so our philosophy of our NGO is economic inclusion of women. Historically, the core of organization used to be 15 persons who were the women representatives of business. They would spend their money on socially important projects. So back in 2018, we implemented the programs of training women and gave money for the starting capital, even when this was not a mainstream. They were doing this in Kremenchuk city. Now we have at least 10 offices all over Ukraine and one abroad, and one in Estonia we are going to open by the end of the year. So economics is in our focus. The title, Divergent Woman, why? Because in the best marketing traditions, it has to be memorable, it has to be simple, yes, and causing some emotions. I think that it does do that. when they hear for the first time the name of our NGO, I will try to speak about the idea and sense of cooperation with Helvetas and why it's very successful for us. Me, as a manager who's the entrepreneur who left business into public sector, I brought certain approaches of efficiency because for us the process itself is not meaningful if there is no tangible results. Many people, when people gather, discuss different problems, and the results that they gain, there could be sometimes a big gap in that.
We start with what we would like to achieve in the end. All the programs that we implement jointly with Helvetas, we have one core KPI, which I'm tracking personally, and my chief of the project also accordingly tracks that. That's the number of employed people. We arrange training of women in untypical professions, in male typical profession, like wheel transport repair officer or loaders. Those are professions in which women were historically not welcomed, which were historically male, and where teams are 99.9% composed of men. Due to war challenges and also due to structural unemployment and vacancies that are in demand, and due to the economic capability to obtain more money than a woman would be able to earn in other spheres, we understood why women did not want sometimes or feel out of place, why they're resistant to changing their specialization. Because we have a paradigm, psychologists also involve themselves in that this trend, this tendency in the society that work must be a hobby, it must inspire, create some positive emotional background in your daily life and inspire you for something, some other things. It's not true. Sometimes work is about rationalism, about money, about very specific things. If your work does not bring you earning, if you cannot support your child as a solitary mother, you can get retraining. Yes, indeed. Maybe there will be no inspiring fancy office where many women aspire to be hired at, but there will be money. You will have your economic security, your security in the tomorrow's day and in your own self as an employee, as a person, because you can have a separate hobby outside your workplace. Your work must give you money. And that's very different from men, because men mostly find opportunities that pay. And this mentality, this mindset must be mended and it must change. That's a challenge which we tackle currently, and I would like to point it out. The second thing is that women, when they go to a male dominant sphere, they face 90% of male team. You just need to keep going. You just need to proceed. I am somewhat adjacent to politics. That's gender code. When I worked in the policy, the quantity turns into quality. The more women we produce with high specialization in male-dominant areas, the more in number they get, the more quality will be given to their experience. And concerning employment, we have 60 to 80% of women who are trained in these professions have already been employed at this stage of training even. The training is very short, even half a year. The certificate that is offered currently by the Center of Employment, not everybody is ready to dedicate that much time to training, because they cannot combine it with their daily work of caring for underage people or elderly. We are very oriented, our program was oriented by the fact that colleges could not communicate with businesses. They were sitting and waiting for businesses to knock on their door. And businesses are busy with other things, with their employment gaps, with the taxes, with providing electricity when the during the blackout. They have various challenges, and they have different challenges. They have nothing to count on. That's why we went to businesses and became the facilitators between businesses and educational institutions providing short-term educational programs. We trained them in negotiating processes. We even gave them a memo notice in legal issues. We trained them in terms of managerial skills because they had no managerial skills. Everything is evolving. We would like to transit educational. Your task is to popularize your profession as much as possible. Your task is to be the influencer. That's the task of colleges, because if we bring that burden and put it on the shoulders of businesses, well, it's a no-go, because colleges must also participate in this process and exert their influence and make their input there. That's all what I wanted to say. I'm giving the floor over to the next speaker. Thank you very much, Ms. Yulia. I believe we do need a round of applause because many inspiring things have been voiced. Mr. Artem, you're with the microphone. So the next question is coming to you. As a member of Skills Alliance of Ukraine, your project is supporting the professional education reformation. I would like to kindly ask you to share your lessons learned and experience of this period. And after that, there will be one more short question, but it will be later. Thank you very much, dear colleagues of Helvetas, for inviting me. The program Skills for Recovery, which I believe the majority of the people present here today, it's a program organized by the financial support of Europe, Denmark, Germany, and Estonia. And as you very correctly remarked, the program has immense experience in retraining and requalification and training of adults and so on and so forth. It was very pleasant to me to see, in course of the presentation of the survey of professional institutions, that one of the positive changes of the recent years was a cooperation with Youth for Skills, Skills for Recovery, and GIZ. They called the same project with 3 different words. That's our pleasure. It demonstrates that this cooperation is really valuable, that many institutions cooperate with us and are familiar with us. In particular, Kharkiv institution, Ms. Natalia spoke about their cooperation with Helvetas. They also cooperate with GIZ and with Skills for Recovery program, among other things in training and retraining and requalification of adults. The particular feature, and you asked about lessons learned, in course of reskilling. The particular feature is that we are doing our best to suggest different formats of interaction and different formats of reskilling. What I mean? Well, in the first place, having such a powerful partner in this process as our professional educational institutions, we cooperate with 70 partners across Ukraine. We do our best to involve them in the implementation of reskilling programs in different formats. For example, we have a program that is called Skills for Inclusion. That's a program aimed at requalification of representatives, not vulnerable groups of population, but actually people with disabilities. More than 500 people already participated in it. Some of them have already graduated, and some of them are still under ongoing education. So in course of the education, these people gain skills of work. That's an education that's partially done at the workplace. Those are short-term education ranging from 3 to 6 months. And before the beginning of this program, we picked these specific institutions. Ms. Natalia introduced one of those that can provide for proper education for these people with inclusive infrastructure. That's one of the cooperation formats. Another one is when we work directly with businesses, when we suggest business to identify their needs in staffing, and once we receive certain needs from the businesses. We address for schools with 6 schools that can satisfy those needs, and the workers that can be hired by the businesses, we give them a possibility to be trained partially at the educational institution and partially at the workplace. Therefore, the main lesson learned is the fact that professional educational institutions, we have a well-developed network of them, are very reliable partners in the course of retraining. I promise you a second question. You have enumerated several formats with which you've been working, and I wonder how the demand on retraining evolved since the full-scale invasion. Could you possibly highlight certain trends or tendencies? Indeed. I can say that we also have experience, like Helvetas does, in organizing short-term courses, among other things, from the very beginning of project, and even earlier than that in EU for Skills project, before the full-scale invasion and right after it. Well, what's changed is that we're doing a very big focus on training of trainers in those professional education and institution. We're reskilling them and also give possibilities for digitalization courses. Before that, it was English language courses, educational visits to Germany, professional sharing of experience, and so on. Because what differs a good educational institution from a bad one, that's the opportunities for educators and administration who proactively seeks opportunities, who proactively develops the institution, and knowing the plans of our political partners, the Ministry of Education, which also, especially since recently, is a reliable partner of ours. We know that investments in such active and progressive in professional education institutions are being planned that proactively seek for opportunities. We understand that the challenges for those are immense, because notwithstanding what the study today showcased, that the number of institutions have dropped, but the students aspiring for education has also shrinked. Since 1091, it is shortened, but it has shortened more than 3 times. That's why educational institutions must be progressive and proactive and seek for opportunities for adults, retraining, opportunities for cooperating with businesses, involving themselves into supervisory boards, and we as Skills for Recovery will assist them on this process. So I hope that now we will have, currently we have programs on retraining administrators and trainers in segments. Thank you very much for your activity. We have only 3 minutes left, so let us proceed in blitz format. I would like to ask my participants, well, some of you even made notes, some of you memorized the results of the survey. What struck you the most, and what is your take-home message speaking about the results of the study? Ms. Anastasia, if possible, very short. The most important thing is informational sharing. We have many organizations that work on retraining. That's why it's very useful to gather, like we did here today, to share the results of studies and to work together, not to work in blindness all separately. This is the way we can achieve better results. Ms. Natalia? With the help of short-term courses, we can raise the professional level of the trainers, of educators. And what struck me in course of listening to the study, I would put the salary to the educators as the biggest challenge, because we can create wonderful rooms, study rooms, but lack inspired people. Even because in Kharkiv, even a person who receives 7,400 salary, that's a very small of a inspiration. I do not believe and do not like the phrase that money seeks people. Money does not seek anyone. You need to work hard to earn money. That's about women, and that's about educators, and about everyone. Jointly, we can push this from the stable point, and we're on the very good track. There has never been a better time for developing professional education. I'm extremely grateful that our professional education team has wonderful leaders. I'm speaking about the Ministry of Education, who supports and develops institutions jointly with partners that we can make them a wonderful future for. Ms. Yulia, please, and thank you for inspiring words. I'd like to add that many good initiatives are existing already, are existing on paper, and we only have to implement them into reality. So it's critical how much it's implemented in real life. And speaking about barriers, today during the first panel it was voiced that some changes do not require funds, but require correct managerial logic. Concerning this infrastructure of supporting women and children, well, I believe we need to shift from raising the number, but creating extended timetable and longer working days. Because if a woman works till 7, but the kindergarten functions till 5, it's impossible to invest your time and get money for that. The employer pays you for the time that you exchange for money, and for your skills as well, of course. So if we bring it all together, many information is gained from such studies, which is manifested in paper format. We need to work on it and implement it. That's why I'm standing for implementations and making steps forward. We will do so. Thank you. Artem, I noticed in the survey that there was a slide about the glance into the future. And the first thing that was voiced by the employers and representatives of schools, that was just the same statement. They expect the development of dual education, both the employers and educational institutions. That's wonderful, I believe. And it's great that both parties have similar vision, because I know that the ministry has been working on it since many years. In 2017, it seems to me, this experiment on dual education started, and maybe back then it was not that popular among educators and among employers. But nowadays, everybody is speaking about it, and with the adoption of the new law, I hope we will see more programs of dual education. So I think it's a very positive thing, both as the study shows and as the employers say. Ms. Natalia, I know you have a final remark. Yes, I wanted to say that I'm glad to every single listener, from the students of high school and who called them as one more rescued, because they gained professional skills that will help this person earn money. Thank you, colleagues. I would like to give a round of applause to the participants of our panel. Thank you very much for your participation. It was purely inspiring. I gained a lot of inspiration here. We are proceeding to closing our forum. I would like to thank to everybody present, online and offline. We hope that this conversation will have a practical continuation in terms of efficient solutions. And please be reminded that our event is organized in the framework of economic stability of Ukraine, supported by Switzerland through Swiss Agency of Cooperation. Please be invited to informal communication and coffee break.